everyone, welcome to the Jayda and Stitches show. I have something of a different sort of vlog for you today. I made a video last January about what to do with it all. And by that I mean all the things that we tend to make that accumulate when we have a hobby. Now, sometimes it's easy to get rid of this stuff. If you crochet with intention, maybe you're making them as gifts, so you're giving them away. You're making them for donations, so you're donating things. Maybe you're making things to sell. But sometimes you end up with stuff that piles up in the closet. Maybe it didn't sell, maybe you couldn't give it away, maybe you forgot you had it, or maybe it's something you've had, you made it for yourself, you've used it, and now it's kind of gotten to the end of its life, but you can't really bear to get rid of it, and you're not really sure how you would get rid of it anyway. Let me remind you about this thing. Some of you might recognize this blanket from previous videos we've done where I did sort of roundup videos on my granny square blankets. This one in particular stood out as a what not to do when it comes to mixing fibers. So this was a really pretty granny square blanket I made out of a whole bunch of scraps. I loved the way it turned out, and when I went to add a border, I had this really nice beige yarn lying around in the stash, so I decided I would use that. Turns out it was wool, and when I washed the blanket, the wool border felted and shrunk. And that made the entire blanket weird. So now it wouldn't lie flat. It kind of had this weird cocoony, billowy, balloony thing going on. I didn't like the way the border looked. I didn't like the way it felt. I struggled through use with it for a while. Sometimes I would fold it up and use it as a bit of a cushion. But ultimately it just wound up taking up space in the closet. But it was so pretty, and I couldn't really decide, what to do with it. I didn't really want to get rid of it. I didn't want to throw it out. I thought about taking off the border and adding another border to it, but honestly, got lazy and decided I didn't want to do that either. So the other day, I was thinking, I need a little pet bed for my furry little four-legged family member. And pet beds can get kind of expensive. And I thought, I should just make a little mattress. How hard can that be? I'll use a pillow, I'll put a little pillowcase on it, and then I remembered things to do with all the stuff you've got. I pulled that blanket out of the cupboard and I turned it into a mattress. And today I'm going to take you through the little process I went through on turning this old crocheted blanket into a mattress that my furry little four-legged family member can use. And now I have used it, it's been put to good use. And I don't feel bad about the way it turned out anymore because somebody else is using it. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of it, this is it. This is what I'm talking about. And if you'll excuse the kind of rough look of this poor little pillowcase that I made for it already, as you'll see later in today's vlog, I gave it to her already and it was an instant hit. But I made the mattress first, and then I made a little simple pillowcase. This is one of those pillowcases where you just it's three pieces, it's three rectangles, the main sized rectangle, and then two slightly smaller rectangles that overlap in the back so that you can just pull the whole thing apart and get the whole mattress, or in this case kind of pillow, out of it. This wound up being about the size of a standard pillow. But the difference is, unlike a pillow where the stuffing might kind of get clogged to one side or the other, it's a folded blanket. So it's got a really heavy, squishy, firm feeling. And most importantly, little Penny loves it. So without further ado, let me take you through the process of having turned this old crocheted blanket that I was no longer very fond of into a very functional little mattress for my sweet little Penny. First, a little pictorial trip through what I've done. I took the blanket, I folded it in half again, and folded it in half a third time, basically so it was folded into eighths. I then decided it might be a good idea to attach the ends together so it didn't want to unfold. I could have stitched this with a big sewing thread or something, but I decided stitching, actually crocheting across the edge, might make the most sense. So I grabbed some very strong cotton that I had in my collection that I'm not really worried about, I don't really like for anything else, my hook, and I started, as you can see, to stick my hook all the way through all the edges of the blanket where it was folded and started making large single crochets. I would chain two in between each set of big extended single crochets. And when I say extended, I mean I pulled up on the loops and made them really tall. This is super loose crochet. I just wanted it to not unravel. I wasn't really interested in it looking good. Decided finally I needed to get to a bigger hook, switched to a long hook with no ergonomic handle. And along the front, where I've actually got the fold of the blanket, I start punching the hook all the way through the fold of the blanket. So not just the edges, but the whole fold. And then on the third side, I've got all the folds of the edge. You can see that really felted border that I was dealing with. And I was trying to stick the hook in between the shell stitch, which is what the stitch was. Really difficult to do because everything had felted. And this is how it finally finished looking along that side. Really messy, but it wasn't going to unfold. It was just going to stay in that folded position forever. The next thing I had to do was make an actual mattress encasement. So I had this old curtain. Yes, that's a curtain. Yes, it hung in my house. And yes, I made it. I took the backing off and I decided to also fold it in half, sew it all together, and then fold it in half again. I used my serger for this because this was some pretty heavy duty fabric. Some of it was corduroy. I folded the whole thing in half with the wrong sides together. I didn't care about ironing or anything. I just wanted to get it folded in half. Then I folded the whole thing in half again. And I figured that two thick sides on either side would make a pretty heavy duty mattress encasement, since this was going to be for my little pup. But since it was so thick, I didn't dare trust either of my sewing machines to stitch through it. So I stitched through it with my hands with a needle and thread. And honestly, this was probably the best idea because I could hold the edges together as I went. Nice messy stitching. Didn't care. This isn't going to be seen by anybody. I just doubled up my thread and off I went. And then I had a pretty nice encasement now made out of this old curtain, which also had been taking up space in my shelves because I don't like to throw out fabric. And it was the perfect size for this higgledy-piggledy-jiggly little mattress that I'd folded up. So I stuffed the old quilt into the mattress casement, as you can see there. Then all that was left to do was stitch up the end by hand, put the new pillow casing on it, and see what Penny thought of it.
New pillow!
And that is it. She loves it. I love it. It's a great use of things. I've used up not just the old blanket, as you saw, but an old curtain and even some leftover polar fleece. So this little pet bed is cute. It's soft. She can drag it around. I can use it as a mattress for her in a whole bunch of different places. And it didn't cost me a thing except my time. And that might be the best part. I hope you found this helpful, maybe inspirational. If you're wondering what to do with it all, I'm hoping that today's video might give you an idea of just repurposing something like an old blanket, especially if you don't really want to get rid of it. You're not really sure if you could donate it and maybe it's not really usable anymore. That kind of thing. I hope it was useful. And we'll see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, stay cozy, and we'll see you soon. Bye guys!
Hi everybody! Mr. and Stitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.